Code Explained says hi. Today we're going to build a currency converter using JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. So when the user opens our currency converter for the first time, the first thing he will get is the exchange rate for one United States dollar to its local currency. So for example, if the user is from India, when he opens the app for the first time, he will get the exchange rate for United States dollar to Indian rupee. And then he can do whatever conversion he wants. So I can convert USD to Indian rupees, or I can also convert Indian rupees to USD. I also can change the base currency here, so I can, for example, choose Bitcoin, and also I can, of course, use another currency rather than my local currency. So for example, I can use USD or United States dollars. So this is what we're going to build in today's tutorial. So let's get to it. Well, now if you want to follow along with me in this tutorial, the first thing you're going to do is to go and grab the starter template from our GitHub repo. You will find the link down in the description. The starter template here has this folder images, which has this image that we're going to be using, and also the style.css. All the code is already typed in, so we're not going to talk about CSS in this tutorial. Now I'm going to go back here, and then I'm going to go and download this as a zip. I'm going to open the zip file, and then you can find the final code for our project here, so you can always check the final project. And now I'm just going to go and copy the starter template to my desktop, and then rename this to currency converter, and we're good to go. Now I just opened the VS Code and the browser side by side. I'm gonna now go and open the folder in the desktop, our starter template, and here I'm gonna create two files, the index.html file and also the converter.js file. Inside the index.html, I'm gonna go and create a basic HTML code. So I'm gonna give this a title, currency converter, and then I'm gonna go and link the style sheet. Okay, I'm just gonna go and link the style sheet. So it's gonna be style.css. And here at the bottom, I'm gonna go and link this script, converter.js. I'm gonna hit save, and then I'm gonna go live. So this is our currency conversion. Now I'm gonna go and type in the markup for our app. I'm gonna start with the dev with the class name container. If I hit save, now you can see that it's turned to green because our style sheet already has CSS inside. Now I'm gonna go and create another dev with the class name currency converter, and then it's gonna be a title. So the title is gonna be an image with the source here, images, then exchange.png, and then an h1 that says currency converter, and I'm gonna hit save. Now you can see it there. And now I'm gonna add another dev with the class name exchange rate. So this is where I will say like the source currency, for example, one United States dollar equals, and then the user local currency here. And then I'm gonna add another dev, which is gonna be from currency as a class name, and then it's going to be an input inside with the type number. I'm going to give an ID. I'm going to give it an ID to select it. So it's going to be from currency and then amount. And then I'm going to close the input. I'm going to give this actually a value of 1. And now I'm just going to go and add a select input here. Now I'm going to go and just copy the whole thing and paste it in here. Instead of from, I'm going to say to. The same thing here, to. And for the value, it's not going to be defined, so we need to calculate that amount. And I'm going to hit save, and now you can see our currency or our currency converter. Now we just need to like change all of these using JavaScript. So now it's time to go into converter.js and do the JavaScript part. And now, because we need to know the user's local currency, so we need to use IP data. So you can click the link down in the description, or you can just go to this URL. So to consume the API, you will need to use or to create a free account and then sign in. So I'm just gonna go and sign in and go to API settings, and this is the key they provide to consume their API. So I'm just gonna go and copy this and go back to VS Code. Inside my converter.js file, I'm gonna go and add a comment called API providers. I'm gonna create an object called IP data, and I'm gonna set this to an object, and I'm gonna create a property called key, and then I'm gonna set this to the key I just copied from their website. Now I'm gonna go back here and click on documentation to know how to consume the API. So I'm gonna go to currency detection here. I'm gonna click on it, and this is an example request. So to get the user's currency, you need to make a request, a GET request to this URL here. So I'm just gonna go and copy this and go back to VS Code, and this time I'm going to create a method called currency. So I'm going to set this equal to function, and then I'm going to return that URL. So I'm just going to go and use the backticks here and paste in the URL. So now I'm just going to go and copy this whole thing here, and I'm going to call this base URL. And now, instead of typing it all the time, I'm just gonna go and say this dot base URL. Now, instead of using this IP address, I'm just gonna remove it, and they will automatically get the user address and then return the right currency. Now, instead of test, we need to put in this key here. So I'm just gonna use another $sign and call it braces, and then this keyword, and then this time it's going to be key. And now I'm just going to go and open the browser, and then open the console, and then try to call our function currency. Okay, currency, and then call the function. Now you can see that this will return the right URL to make a request to get the user's currency. If I click on it now, this will open in a tab, and this will return a JSON, and this is the key name, and then the value is Canadian dollar, and then the code is CAD, so the code of the currency. So this is exactly what we need, the name and the code of the currency. So we're done with the user's local currency. Now let's go to get the exchange rate. And now it's time to get the exchange rate, and for that I'm going to use currency layer. You'll find the link down in the description. So you can go and sign up for free, or you can just go and use the API key I'm going to be providing. So I'm just going to go and sign in and then log into my account. Now this is the API key, so I'm just gonna go and copy this, go to VS Code, and this time I'm gonna create another object called currency layer. It's gonna be equal to non-object, the key property, and then paste in the key. All right, now I'm gonna go to documentation, and then I'm gonna click on API endpoints, and this is all the available endpoints. So the one we need is this one here, but I might need all these endpoints in another project later. So what I'm going to do is just save this code. And I think you have already noticed that whenever I hover over a snippet of code, this button here, save, shows up. And that's because I'm using this extension by Pieces for Chrome. So now whenever I go to any page and I have a snippet of code, this button here will show up and I can just click on save, and this will save that snippet of code. So now I have saved this code. I also want to save this one, so I'm just gonna go and click on save. Now if I go and open Pieces, I now gonna find all the code I have saved earlier. I'm also gonna find the one I saved from Stack Overflow, and it doesn't end there. So now if I go and open the quick menu here and scroll down, you can see this related links, and if I click on that link, this will take me back to the page from where I saved that snippet of code, and I can now learn again about that code, etc. So it doesn't end there again. So if I go now to my desktop and I have this a screenshot of a code, if I drag and drop this into Pieces, and now I click on this T here, you can see that the code from the screenshot now is a real code, or I can copy and reuse, which is really great. Also, because I have integrated Pieces with VS Code, I can go and select the code I want to save and then right click and then send to Pieces. Now if I go back again to Pieces, it says here code successfully saved. You can find it there, which is really great. So this is really a great tool for a developer, and this will definitely boost your production. So now if you want to give it a try, you just need to go to pieces.app, or you can just click the link down in the description. Now let's go back into Pieces and let's go and find our code for the currency layer API. I'm just gonna go and select this and then copy. Now let's go back to VS Code here, and then I'm gonna add another property called base URL, and then I'm just gonna paste in the code there. And then I'm just gonna go and copy the endpoint and then create a method called convert, and then it's going to be a function, and then it will just return the endpoint. So backticks, and then $, then this dot base URL, and then I'm going to append the endpoint. So these will change. So this is the from currency, and this is the to currency, and this is the amount. And this will change, so I'm just gonna create those parameters from currency. We need its code, not the name, and then to currency code, and then the amount. So from currency code, I'm gonna paste it in here. Right, I'm just gonna copy the whole thing and then paste it for the to currency code. You need to rename this to currency code, and then the last thing is amount, and then I'm gonna hit save. I still need to append the access key, so I'm just gonna go to that documentation. So you can see that it's called access key for the parameter. So I'm just gonna go back into VS Code and then say end, and access key, it's gonna be like just like before, it's going to be this dot key, and that's it. Now let's try if this will work, and I'm going to go here and open the console. Then I'm going to try currency layer dot convert, and then I'm going to pass in some from currency USD, for example, and then British pound, and then the amount is going to be 1. Now if I hit enter, I get this link. If I click on it, now I get a success true. Then the query was from USD to Great Britain pound, and then the amount was 1, and then the result here is 0.736, etc. So this is the exchange rate. Now we also need to get the currencies list. So I'm just gonna go to the top here, and you can see that if you want to get the supported currencies in a JSON format, you just need to use this endpoint. So I'm just gonna go and copy this list, and then I'm gonna go back into here into my VS Code, and I'm just gonna go and copy this whole thing. So I'm gonna call this list, and this time instead of convert, it's gonna be list. We don't need these parameters. Just gonna erase them, and we don't need all of these here. We just need the access key, and that's it. Now let's try that again. Let's go back to our console, and then for the currency layer, and then list, call the function, and this will return the right URL. So if I click on it now, you can see I have got all the currencies. So we have here the code of the currency and its name, and then each of these currency code and name will go into our select inputs. And now it's time to consume our APIs. So the first thing we're going to do is to get the user's currency, which means sending a request to this URL here. So which means ipdata.currency. So I'm going to go and create a function to get the user's currency. So I'm going to call this function get user currency, and what this function will do is to send a request to this link here, or to this endpoint. So I'm going to create a res constant, and then I'm going to use fetch to fetch the API. So it's going to be ipdata.currency. Because this will take some time, so I'm just going to use await, and because I'm using await inside a function, this function must be an async function. Alright, now after I have got the response, I now need to JSON parse it. So I'm going to save this into a constant called user currency, and then I need to await for this again. So response.json, and that's it. Now I'm gonna go and console.log the user currency. Now if I go and call the function, invoking the function and save, you can see here I will get an object. So with the code of the user's local currency and the name, and etc. So all we need for our app is the code and the name. Of course, if I go and change the location, for example, to India using a VPN, in that case, if I refresh, I will get the same object, but this time with the Indian rupee as a currency. So that's it for the user's currency. Let's move on to the next step. Well, now let's go and get all the currencies supported by the API, which will go at the end to our select inputs here. So we need to send a request to this endpoint here, which means currency layer list. So I'm gonna go and create a new function called get currencies. So it's gonna be a function get currencies, and that's it. Now let's go and get a response from the API using fetch, and then this is going to be currency layer dot list. All right, now I'm gonna use await again, and because I'm using await, this must be again an async function. Now after I get a response, I need to JSON parse it, so to get the data as an object. So res.json, and that's it. Now all I need is to console.log the data to see what I will get from the API. So if I now remove this function here and then call get currencies and refresh, save, so it says pending, which means I need to use await again here, and now I receive an object, and then we have a property called currencies, which has all the currencies in it. So all the currencies. So I might just say here const currencies, and then it's going to be data dot currencies, and then I'm just gonna go and console the currencies instead. So if I save now, you can now see that I have all the currencies in an object. Now just gonna go and remove this whole thing here, and then just say return to return data.currencies. So that's it for the currencies. Now let's go to the next step. And now it's time to go and get the exchange rate. So we need to consume this API, and we need to send a request to this endpoint, which means currency layer that convert. So an exchange rate, which means a function called get exchange rate. So an async function again, an async function called get exchange rate. All right, and this function here will take in get exchange rate. Will take in, for example, the exchange rate of USD to, for example, Great Britain pound or British pound. So that's it. So now for the function here, to actually get the exchange rate, what we want is to make a request to our API using await fetch and then currency layer dot convert, and this will take in from currency code, which is this one here, and to currency code, which is this one here, and then the amount. Okay, so it's gonna be from currency code, then to currency code, and then the amount. All right, now here I'm just gonna go and say from currency code, then to currency code. That's great. Now for the amount, it's going to be 1 because this is an exchange rate. I need to know how much is 1 USD into like British pound. So I'm gonna go and say const amount and then set this to 1, and that's it. Now all I need to do is to go and say const then data and then await and JSON parse the response JSON. Now if I had save and then console.log the data, now it can get an object, so quote, it says quote here, info quote, or I just gonna use result to get the exchange rate. So I'm just gonna go and say here result, hit save, and this is the right exchange rate. Now what I want to achieve here is whenever I want to do a conversion, I'm not gonna do it on the API side. So I'm not gonna call all the time whenever the user wants to make a conversion here. I don't want to make an API call every time. So that will consume a lot of data. So instead, I'm just gonna go and get the exchange rate. That's why I said here amount 1 equals to 1, and then save it into a global variable called, for example, exchange rate. And then whenever I want to do a conversion between these two here, I'm just gonna go and use that exchange rate I have got from the API. Alright, so I'm doing the conversion on the user side, not the API side. But when the user here changes the from currency or the to currency, then I need to call the get exchange rate function again to get the exchange rate from the API. And that's it. Now let's go and move to the next step. Now, after I have got all the data from the APIs, it's time now to go and render the data to the user interface. So when the user loads the app for the first time, we're going to initialize the app. So I will go and create a function called initialize app. So it's going to be called just init. And what this function will do, it's going to render the exchange rate. So the exchange rate here, so for example, $1 United States dollar equals to some other currency here. And the second thing is to go and render those options. So render select options. And the last thing is to go and convert this amount here of this currency to this currency here. So it means convert. So now let's go and start by rendering the exchange rate. So I'm gonna need a function called render exchange rate. So a function I didn't create yet. So another thing, sorry for this, I have to say here return, because I'm just console logging that for now. The same thing here. We don't need to console log, we actually need to return the data to use it. So now after that, I need to create the function render exchange rate. First, render exchange rate will need two currencies, the from currency and the to currency. The from currency is going to be by default the USD, the United States dollar, and then the second one is going to be the user's local currency. So I'm gonna go and say default base currency code. So this here will be the USD by default. You can choose whatever you want, and then it's gonna be the user currency that code for the to currency, this one, the one that will go here. So let's go and define this one here. So I'm gonna go to the top, and then I'm gonna add a comment here that says const and parse. So const this is gonna be equal to USD, and that's it. Now for the user currency dot code, we need to make a request to the API using get user currency. Remember, my get user currency is an async function, so I need to use await. So I'm gonna go and say const user currency and then equal to await, and then get user currency, and that's it. Now after I have got the user currency from here, I'm just going to send it to my render exchange rate. Alright, as you can see here, I have an error. It says await is only valid in a async function, which means I need to make this an async function because I'm using wait here. I'm going to hit save, and now I need to call the init function here to initialize the app. After that, you're going to see that it says here reference error, so render exchange rate is not defined, which means I need to go and define a render exchange rate. So I'm just gonna go and create that function render exchange rate. So it's gonna be a function, then render exchange rate. So as you can see here, it takes in the to currency, then the from currency. So to currency, the from currency, from currency code, then the to currency code. Alright, so let's just console.log done, console.log those two, console.log the from currency and the to currency. So you can see here that USD INR. So USD is the default base currency and INR is the local currency. If I go and change the location, for example, to United Kingdom, if I refresh, I'm gonna go USD and then the British pound. So that's great. Now let's go and get the exchange rate from the API using the get exchange rate function. So I'm just gonna go and say get exchange rate. So he's gonna take in the from currency and the to currency here. And because this is an async function, again I need to await, and after I get that, I'm gonna save this to exchange rate. So now this is the exchange rate. Let's go and console.log the exchange rate. So await is only valid. Now I need actually to make this async again. So now I have got the exchange rate. Now, because I've said that I'm going to use exchange rate globally in my application, so I'm going to use it here to render it, and I also will use it to do the conversion, which means I'm not going to use this as or set the exchange rate as a local variable to the function. I'm actually going to make it a global variable. So now that I have the exchange rate, I'm not going to console get, but I need to show it here, which means I need to select this element using JavaScript. So I'm going to the top here, and then I'm going to add a comment that says select elements, and then const, it's going to be exchange rate element, and then I'm going to use document dot query selector, and then it's going to be dot exchange rate. So the exchange rate is the class name of this element here. I can make sure by going to here, so it's exchange rate, the class name, so the class name of this element here. Now the HTML code that goes inside is this HTML code. I'm just gonna go and copy this. So I'm gonna go to converter.js now. After I have selected the element, I can now change its inner HTML. So I'm just gonna go to render exchange rate, and then I'm gonna say here exchange rate element dot inner HTML, and I'm gonna open the backticks here. I'm gonna put in the HTML code. Alright, now instead of these dashes here, it's gonna be 1. It's always gonna be 1 because amount here is 1 of the from currency, and then it's gonna be the from currency. So from currency code equals, and then here it's going to be the exchange rate that I get from the API of the to currency code. Now if I save this, you can see I have got the results, which is great. Now I have some problems here. The problems are I don't have to show USD. I don't have to show the code of the currency. I want to show the name of the currency, which means I need to go and search for the name of the currency. And for that, I'm going to need to go and make a call using get currencies. So I'm going to fetch the API for the currencies. So here inside init, beside getting the user's currency, I need also to get this currencies from the API. So I'm gonna go and say await, then get currencies. But again, because I'm gonna use the currencies here in this function here, and also gonna use the currencies in here, I don't want to make currencies here like local variable to the function in it. I want to make it a global variable. So I'm just gonna remove const and then copy this and take it to the top beside exchange rate. So now these are both global variables. Now when I get the currencies here in inside my init function, then I can go and access that currencies object from all over the app. Now inside of from currency code, I'm just gonna go and say currencies and then open the brackets and then hit save. Now you can see now it says United States dollar. If you don't understand this, I'm going to show you what's happening. So when I say currencies here, my global variable has all the currencies. It's an object, and each object here has a property, and the value is the name of the key here is the code of the currency, and then the value is the name of the currency. So here I have the code of the currency, and I don't know what it is, so it's just a parameter here that's gonna be changing all the time. So that's why I don't have the possibility to do, for example, currencies.usd. So if I knew USD, the name of the property, I can just get the name or the value using this way, currencies.usd. But because I don't know the name of the property, I will do it this way. So I'm just gonna open the brackets and then say USD, and you can see here that it's the same thing. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. So I'm just gonna go and copy this whole thing and put it in here and say to currency instead. If I save, now you can see 1 United States dollar equals British pound sterling. So that's great. Now we have a problem here. I don't want to show all these numbers here. I just want to show like two numbers after the dot. So in that case, I'm going to use a method used in numbers called toFix. And I'm going to set this to 2. So if I hit save, now you can see it's now just 2 numbers after the dot. But this is a magic number. I'm just gonna take it from there and go to the top and say const data precision. I'm gonna call this data precision, and I'm gonna set it equal to 2. Now instead of just going exchange rate to fix 2, now it's gonna be data precision, and you see I'm gonna get the same things. Now I also have another issue here because we have 0.74. This must be plural. So I'm just gonna go here and say plural, and then equal to, if the exchange rate is not equal to 1 or it's equal to 1, in that case it's gonna be an empty string. But if it's not equal to 1, if it's 2 or 0.74, in that case it's going to be plural, so I'm going to use an S here. So now this plural here will just go to the end of the currency name. So I'm just going to say plural, and this will make this plural, I guess. Well, that's it for rendering the exchange rate. Now let's go to the next step where I will go and render these options here. Now it's time to render the currencies we get from the API into my select inputs here. So I'm going to render the currencies to select. So I'm just going to call the function render currencies, and that's it. So render currencies will need the currencies themselves, which is what we get from the API here. So we will need the currencies themselves, and then also we need here an option that will be selected by default, which is going to be our default base currency code. So by default, the United States dollar currency will be selected, and here I will select the user's local currency, which is just the user currency dot code, and that's it. Now render currencies is undefined, so I'm gonna go here and say render currencies, and I'm gonna create a function and then the parameters. So we have here the currencies, all right, and then we have here what else, the from currency code, and then the to currency code. Now let's go back in here and let's just console log the currencies again, just to show you what we're going to do. So here I have not an array, I have an object with the code of the currency as the property, and the value is the name of the currency. So I'm just repeating this so you know what I'm doing. Now I can't use a for each to loop or to iterate my currencies here because it's not an array. So to iterate an object, what you need to do, or what you need to use, is a for n statement. So for example, for const property in object. So for property in object, your object, in this case it's going to be the currencies, and the property is the code of the currency, and the property is the code of the currency. So now if I go and console.log the code here, which is the code of the currency, I will get all the currencies codes. That's great. Now if I want to get the name of the currency, I will use my currencies object, and then I'm going to use the square brackets just like we did in this function here. So I'm going to pass in the code, which is this property here. If I save, now you can see the code of the currency and its name, which is great. Now we need to render these into my select inputs here, but I first need to go and select it. So I'm going to go to index, so it's from currency, then select, and for this one it's to currency, then select, almost the same. So I'm just going to go and copy the class name and copy the select here tag, and I'm going to go to converter.js, I'm going to the top, then const, I'm just going to call this f select. So from currency select. So document dot query selector, and then a class name from currency, and then select, just like that. For the other one, it's going to be to currency, then select, and then just use a T here, and I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go now to my render currencies. I'm just going to go and remove this. I'm going to hit save, and I'm just going to try my to select. So now I have selected this successfully. I can use F here, F select, and I have successfully selected this one here. That's great. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the f select dot inner HTML equal to some backticks. So it's going to be an option tag, Then I'm gonna close the option here. Alright, now because we have too many options, I'm gonna use a plus equals sign. And then inside the option here, it's gonna be the code of the currency and the name of the currency. So the name of the currency is given by currencies, and then the code, if you remember. So I'm just gonna set this as a const, and I can use it now. So here it's gonna be the code. I'm gonna add a dash here, and then the name. And let's see what we're gonna get. So after this refreshes, you can see that I have all of them in the fselect input, which is great. So I can select each one here, each of the currencies. Now by default, it's the first one in the select options. But I want to select by default this one here, the United States dollar. So I want to use or to add selected only if the code is USD. So I'm going to use a ternary here, ternary operator. So I'm going to say a base or the selected, I'm just going to call this the selected from currency, which is too long, so I'm just gonna let that for now. So selected from currency. So if the code is the same as the from currency code, which is the default base currency code, which is USD, if it's from currency code, right, then it's gonna be selected, else it's gonna be just an empty string. And now this selected from currency, it's going to be here, it's gonna go here. So just gonna go here, right? Now you see that USD now is selected. All right, now I need for each option a value. Of course, when I selected, I want the value of the option selected. So it's just going to be again the code. All right, now let's just arrange this because it looks messy. So I'm just going to put this in another line, put this in another line. That's it. So we have an option with the value of code. So let's just go and see what it looks like. So you can see we have a select and we have an option. It has the code and the name of the currency. The one that is selected, if we scroll down, it's gonna be USD. Where is it? I'll show all 168. So it's here. So USD, it's the one selected. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is do the same thing for the T select, the to currency select. I'm just gonna paste in that in there, but this time it's gonna be T, right? T select inner HTML, but this time the selected currency, it's not gonna be the selected from currency, but it's going to be selected to currency. And I'm just gonna go and duplicate this line, and this will be selected to currency and to currency code. So if this code here is to currency, the user's local currency in this case, it's going to be selected. So if I hit refresh, now you can see now that it's the British pound sterling, that it's selected. And I guess that's it for rendering the currencies. And now it's time to show the value of this input. But if you think about it, the value of this input when I initialize the app is just the exchange rate, because 1 USD, for example, is 0.74 British pound. So I could just go and change the input value here to the exchange rate, which is a global variable. But I still prefer to use a function called convert that will do any conversion I want. So for example, I want to convert from USD to British pound. So in that case, I'm going this direction, and I also can do the conversion the other direction. So my convert will need just to know the direction, and thus it will make the conversion. So I'm just gonna go here, for example, and say from to. So this means that we'll do the conversion in this direction from USD to British pound. But if I say here to, then from, in that case I'm gonna do the conversion from British pound to USD. That's really simple. So when the app is run for the first time, I'm gonna do the conversion from to. Alright, now I need to define convert. So let's go and create our function convert. It's gonna take in a direction as a parameter. I'm just gonna add a comment here that says convert. So, and then I'm gonna determine an if statement. So if the direction is from to, alright, and then else if direction then is to, then from. Now if the direction is from to in this direction here, I need to know this amount here and then change the value of this input here. So I need to know the value of this input and then change the value of this input. Right? So when the direction is from to from, I want to know the amount of this input here and then change the value of this input here. Of course, based on the exchange rate. Right. Now I need to select this two first. So I'm going to top, and I'm going to say here const, then I'm going to call this f input, so like f select, this one here. Now this is going to be f input, then equals to document. I'm just going to go and take the whole thing from there. So if I go here, the ID of this input is from currency amount and this one is to currency amount. So I'm just going to go and paste that in here. Beside this one here is an ID, and then I'm just gonna go, so I have here just a sync quote, and then I'm gonna go and duplicate this, and instead here I'm gonna say T, and then here I'm gonna say to currency. Alright, so I'm just gonna check that again, F input, so it's this one here, and then T input, it's this one here. So if I say value, so it's an empty string because this one is empty. If I say F here, it's going to be returning 1, and that's great. So now let's go and change the value of this input based on the direction of the conversion. So if direction from to, so I need to change this one, which means T, then input that value must be changed. So if I put, for example, here 1000, when I initialize the app, this will be 1000. You can see it there. Now let's do the right value. So if you do some simple math, you will know that to get this value here, to do the conversion, you will need this amount times the exchange rate. So I'm just gonna go and use the exchange rate times how much the T or the f input, in this case, the f input that value, and that's it. So now after a while, okay, t value didn't happen. Exchange rate, you know why? Because in my init function here, so I needed some time to figure out this using some console logs. So for example, if I go here and say console.log and then exchange rate, you'll find this exchange rate is undefined. Why? Because now when I call the function init, render exchange rate is an asynchronous function, so which means that this will run at the same time as convert, or even convert will run after the render exchange rate finishes. So which means I just need to wait for the render exchange rate function to finish and then run the convert. So now if I save, you can see that I'm gonna get the exchange rate here, which is great. Now the same thing here, we need to like fix this to just two numbers after the dot. I'm just gonna put this into some parentheses and then go and say to fixed and then data precision. Now I'm just gonna get 0.74, which is great. Now I don't like this f input value here. I'm just gonna go and take this to the top, right? And I'm gonna call this helpers, right? And I'm gonna create a function called from currency amount, right? And this will just return f input value. And also I'm gonna do the same thing for the other one, so it's gonna be to currency amount, and this will be t input that value. Now I'm gonna go here to my convert function and I'm gonna say from currency amount, and now you can see there it's gonna just work, but it didn't. Okay, need to call the function, so 0.74, which is great. Now I'm just gonna get rid of this console log. I'm just gonna get rid of this too, and then save and then refresh. Alright, now when it's the other way, I'm just gonna go and copy the whole thing from here, and then this time it's going to be from currency input. So I want to change this input here when I change this one. So when the user changes the value here, I want to do the conversion and then change the f input value. Now the exchange rate, then from currency, this will be to currency, except this time it's going to be to currency divided by the exchange rate. And on top here, I'm just gonna make it like the bottom one, it's gonna be times the exchange rate. Alright, so if you want to do the conversion from to, you want to multiply it by the exchange rate, but if you want to do the conversion the other direction, you need to divide by the exchange rate. So this is just some simple maths, and I hope you don't get lost there. So now after I have like set up my convert function, now when I change these, you can see that nothing happens at all. So which means I need to add some event listeners to all these inputs here. So that's what we're going to do in the next step, and that's going to be the last step in our tutorial. Now it's time to add some interactivity or user interactivity to our app. So let's go and add some event listeners. So event listeners, And we need to add an event listeners to all the 4 inputs we have here. So we have our T input, and there our F input, and also our T select, and also our F select. Alright, now what I'm going to do is add an event listener, and it's gonna be on change, and then it's gonna be an anonymous function. Alright, now you need to know that when I change the T input, this input here, I want to change this input here. I want to do the conversion and change this input here. So I need to call the function convert to then from. But for the F input, when I change this one here, I want to do the conversion this direction, so from to. So I'm just gonna go and copy this and paste in here. So this will be from then to, and that's it. Now for the select inputs, and just gonna add another comment here, so input. So for T select, when I change one of these, I want to do the conversion the same way. So for the T input, it's gonna be the same thing for T select, and this one will go right here. So let's try this. So now if I go and, for example, change this to 2, now there is not changing immediately or while I'm typing until I am focused. So now it has been changed. To change this, whenever I change the input of one of these inputs, I'm not going to use change, I'm going to use input. The same thing here, I'm going to use input. Now if I save, if now it's 0, you can see that it has been changed. 1, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0. You can see now that it has been changed whenever I change this input here. Or if I change this one here, it's going to be like the same thing. Right, now when I change one of these, I'm just going to put a 1 in here. Alright, so and refresh. So now if I go and change this here, for example, let's change euros, you can see that nothing's happening. So the conversion has been done. We call the function conversion, but nothing happens because we are still using the old exchange rate. So you can see here that the exchange rate didn't change. So beside converting, when we change the select inputs or we change the options here, we need to go and call the API to get the new exchange rate for these two currencies. So what I'm going to do is I need to go and re-render the exchange rate, and this will need the from currency code. So it's here from currency code and the to currency code. So I need this one to get this one here, which means f select dot value, and then to t select dot value. All right. So, but first, if you remember, render exchange rate here is an asynchronous function, which means I need to wait for the function to call the API and then finishes and then do the conversion. So because I'm using await inside this anonymous function, I'm gonna go and use an async function here. So I'm gonna hit save now. Now this is the t select, so make sure we change this one here. So I'm gonna change it to euros now. If I click on euros, now you can see here it has been changed. Alright, so for example, 1 USD 0.88 euros. Now I can do the conversion. Now we need to do the same thing for our f select. When I change this, I need to go and call the API to get the new exchange rate. So I'm just going to call this, I'm just going to make this async. And now let's go and change this, for example. So let's change this to euros again. And you can see that it has been changed, which is really great. And I can still do the conversion. Well, now I don't like this f_select.value because it's not readable. So I'm just gonna go back to the top again. So I'm just gonna go and copy these two functions, and this time I'm gonna say from currency code. So I'm just gonna get the from currency code from the input here, from the select here. So it's gonna be select value, and here it's gonna be to currency code, and now it's just gonna be select t_select. Now instead of these weird names, I'm just gonna say so here it's gonna be from currency code. It's going to be a function, so I need to invoke the function, and it's going to be to currency code, and I'm going to call the function. Now I'm just going to copy these two here to the bottom, and that's it. So now let's just check this. So if I go and use euros again, now you can see it has been changed, which is really great. Also, if the user is from another country, for example, let's say India again, if I refresh, you can see now that it's $1 United States into Indian rupees, and if I change this to any other currency, we'll get the exchange rate and right conversion. Well, it's the end of this tutorial. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. Well, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Take care, and thanks for watching.